Hey, Jennifer. Okay, it is 6 o'clock, so we'll get Cindy's, hi Garnet. We'll get Cindy's Zoom issue figured out here.
Cindy's able to hear you now.
You can hear us, Cindy?
I can, and
Okay.
I'm ready to call the roll whenever you tell me to.
Awesome, okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for the September 3rd, 2020 meeting of the City of Saugatuck Historic District Commission. First item on the agenda is roll call. Cindy, would you do that for us, please?
Stryker,
Here.
Leo,
Here.
Canarsa,
Here.
Lewis,
Here.
Davenport,
Here.
and Patterson.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Cindy, are there any agenda changes or additions or deletions to our
Yes, there are.
Okay.
At our last meeting, we tabled election of officers, and we should put that back on the agenda, either this one or the next one.
Okay. I would vote to talk about it in commission comments on this one and put it on our next one if we could.
Okay, very good.
Thank you for that. Agenda item 3, approval of the minutes from the regular meeting held on August 6th, 2020. I hope everyone had a chance to read those. Do I have an approval to approve those minutes?
I did make a few corrections. I had some names incorrectly put on the roll call. I had Vicky still in there, and I had Chris Peterson still there, and I changed that to reflect that Garnet was there.
Thank you for that. They were with us in spirit.
I'll tell Vicky that.
Yeah. Sorry, Keith.
I make a motion to approve August 6th meeting minutes, August 6th, 2020.
And that was Keith or John?
John.
John, okay. Is there a second?
Patterson, support, second.
Thank you. Any more discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes, and I will call roll. Patterson?
Yes.
Davenport?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
Canarsa?
Yes.
Leo?
Yes.
Stryker? Yes.
Motion carries.
Did I miss anybody? No. Okay, thank you. Item number 4, any unfinished business? Nope. We'll go right into new business then. First item is 245 Spear Street, renovating a barn on the property. I should welcome our applicants as well. And for those of you who have not been to a historic district meeting, I'm really lax in saying this, so I'll say it tonight. The way we do this is we'll talk about your application, give you an opportunity to add anything to what's already been submitted. And then I'll ask each of the commissioners to ask any questions or to make any comments about the application itself so that every commissioner has a chance to weigh in. There'll be dialogue in that. And then we'll vote on the application at the end of that dialogue. So we'll do a little round robin is usually the way that works. So 245 Spear Street, can you buzz up to the... There you go. Thank
Aaron,
you.
if you want to go to page 3.
Thank you. So hi, Jennifer and Russell. It looks like you're both on the phone today. Welcome. It looks like you are requesting to convert your garage secondary structure to livable space. And I appreciate the completeness of the application and what you sent to us to be able to look through. Is there anything you would like to add that's not in the application in terms of your project?
Well, I would add, again, I am Chuck Boltman, for those who weren't online before when I said hello. I am the architect for the project. And just because it's a point I like to make, if you look carefully, you will find that we never use the word barn, because a barn is a noble thing and a pole structure is less than that.
I love that. Thank you.
So we are converting the pole structure. to be livable space. And so, I don't know how else to say it than I said in the application, though. It is a underwhelming building. And we're going to make it a little bit nicer and less brilliantly green, and just a little bit nicer volume, and use it more productively. So that's really the extent of it.
Okay. Why don't I go around the table and see if anyone has comments or questions? Let me do some Zoom roulette here. Garn, any comments, questions?
I'm gonna hold off for a second and
Okay.
just listen.
We'll pass for sure.
Okay.
John,
Aaron, do you want to go to page 11, please?
John, any questions or comments?
I think Cindy's going, okay, the page that talks about the square footage, I just want to be refreshed on that. It's 600 square feet of living space?
600 square feet of living space is the maximum living space you're allowed to have for an accessory dwelling unit.
And this one has?
748 or something really close to that number.
Okay, and
Some area would have to be dedicated to another use like storage or.
May I address that?
yeah, because I'm not seeing that on the floor plan, so yes, please.
Can you scroll to the next sheet, please? The studio office space, while it has a connecting door, the intention there was that it was used as a separate thing, and it is, I've done the calculation, it is some 200 square feet that would come off of it. It was intended to be used entirely separately, and because this is the Historic District Commission, I expected that to be a zoning issue, and it isn't as clear as it could be here in terms of the internal use of it. But it is intended to be two separate things. The studio office space is basically for use by the house.
Chuck is correct. You don't. The Historic District Commission doesn't have to worry about zoning. They just have to worry about the exterior appearance.
Okay.
It was our thought that we could have the conversation that the wall that divides those two spaces can be fire rated. The door was intended to be locked by the owner. So in the same sense that two hotel rooms sometimes have doors between them, but you can't use them. It's the same sort of thing. And if that's not acceptable, we just build it as a wall.
Makes sense. Thank you. John, any other questions or comments about any of the plans or exterior?
No.
Okay. Jennifer, questions or comments?
Any questions?
Okay. Thank you. Nico?
No,
Questions or
no
comments?
question. Nope.
Keith, questions or comments?
Yeah, just a couple of questions and comments. Exterior materials, it sounds like it looks like the siding is going to be kind of a faux board-on-board construction. Is that correct?
Do you mean as in a board and batten?
Yeah, board and band. Sorry about that.
Probably not. I believe it will just be a straight board siding with either a shiplap joint, something along those lines.
Okay. And then I also took a look at it from Francis Street, which is the adjoining, the other street, which is, beyond on the backside. And from a view standpoint, my comment is it looks like the design, it fits with the rest of the real estate around there, that there's kind of a mix of different types of structures from a design standpoint, and it fits from a appropriateness standpoint. Other than that, I thought it was a nice change, so that's good. Thanks, Chuck.
Nico, any questions? Thank you, Keith. Nico, any questions or comments?
No, I'm good with it.
Garn, anything?
Yep. Nope, I'm good.
I think my only question, if I didn't see it, I apologize, is just a spec for the windows.
We actually hadn't selected those as of right now. We were leaning toward Geldwen windows.
Okay.
But I will say, one of the funny things about COVID is some manufacturers, depending on where they're located, when they used to be 4 weeks out, they're now 12 weeks out.
Right.
So I am finding with a lot of projects that you have to be a little bit more open with certain selections like that, because on small projects, if you have to wait a really long time for a window, you have a problem.
I think so my question about the window would be, as long as they are the silhouette that you're showing here, as long as they're looks like, 1/1 or barn windows, in the way you have in the illustration, and we can put this in the motion, is that that have staff approval when you do select the window to make sure it complies with guidelines. But we would be voting on sort of the aesthetic of what you're asking for, and then the actual window could just be a staff approval.
And that would be fine with us. The windows are drawn the way we would like them. It's simply a matter of selecting the specific manufacturer.
Perfect. I think my only other comment would be sort of similar to Keith's about the siding. I think the same would apply there. If it's different than is drawn, and I'm completely making this up because I know you're not suggesting you would do this, but without being more firm about what that siding is, you could take 25 different boards from 25 different barns, and it could technically comply to this drawing. I know you're not going to do that. I know you're going to put new wood and paint it and all that, but I would just say wood siding that would also fall into staff approval, just in terms of a siding pattern that we would normally approve.
Right. Well, now that you mention it, that's kind of an interesting idea. Maybe we should think about it.
Right. I'm trying to make a noble barn.
Jim, for clarification, the design I'm looking at says new vertical wood siding, reclaimed wood, maybe, like a question mark. So, and then the other comment was on the design itself, Anderson 200 series windows, see window schedule. So I don't know if that's any more specific or less than what you're thinking about.
Well, that was put on there as a baseline for the windows, and since the contractor has given me some feedback as to what may or may not be available, so we put the Anderson windows as a baseline. Contractor was suggesting the Geldwen windows. They will be in the exact same configuration as the drawing. And with respect to the siding, we are balancing budgets and other things. We are more than happy to come back and show you the specifics of the siding as we select that. That's a very easy thing for us to do.
I don't think you necessarily, my own opinion anyway, is that I don't believe you need to come back. I just want to make sure the drawing matches the approval, and what you have. And thanks for calling it out, Keith, because I missed that, that what you have in the application ends up in the final product. So I think it can be as simple as stopping back in and doing staff approval on the windows and the final siding choice. We care mostly about the fact that it's wood, which is great. So I think we'll probably be fine.
Okay.
And the windows are wood, correct? Wood with cladding?
The interior of the windows is wood. The exterior is a clad material.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Did I miss anyone in terms of questions? If not, Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the, actually, Cindy, do you have it written up as what the motion would be?
It is on the bottom of page 5, Aaron.
You want me to do it, Nico? This is Keith.
Go ahead, Keith.
All right, good. I would move to approve the renovation to the pole building at at 245 Spear Street as submitted with, I don't know, did we talk about conditions? Just the, as designed. And if there's any exceptions to that design, that would be administrative approval.
Great.
Is that all right?
That sounds fun. In particular, windows and siding. I think we can.
Yeah, with
that.
any exception to windows and siding noted per the design.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Nico. Any other discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes, and I'll do a roll call. Canarsa,
Yes.
Patterson,
Yes.
Davenport,
Yes.
Lewis,
Yes.
Leo,
Yes.
Straker is a yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're all set. Thank you guys for joining us, and good luck on your project.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Appreciate your assistance tonight.
Thanks.
You bet.
Is it okay if we hang around for another agenda item or two?
Sure.
You
Or if I
bet.
hang around?
Feel
Okay.
feel free. You bet.
All right, thank you.
Okay, our second agenda is 230 Culver Street. Conversation about structures, igloos and otherwise. Is there an applicant here for that one?
Yep, Josh Nottingham's here. I'm not sure if Scott could join. He's out traveling, so I'm not sure if he can make it or not.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.
Yep. Yeah,
Aaron,
good afternoon, everyone.
Aaron, you want to go to page 22 and 23?
Well, maybe, yeah. Aaron, if you could, sorry to go all over the place here. If you could go back to the first page of the application just so we can tee it up a little bit. There you go. One more up. There you go. That's so it looks like you're requesting the installation of either greenhouses or igloo structures for the patio for outdoor seating. Is there anything beyond what you've put in the application that you want to share with us in terms of the usage of these, what's drawing the need, if they're permanent or temporary, things like that? Josh?
Yeah, so basically, as you guys all know, it's a small restaurant, and when we officially can't do outdoor dining anymore, we're going to be at about 20 seats, which will be about 80% less of what we're doing now. So for us to be able to really make sense to be open, we're trying to just come up with some kind of temporary, so it wouldn't be permanent, obviously, a way to allow some kind of outdoor seating, and it wouldn't be on the street at all. It'd be within our gated space. Basically, we'd want to have, and we've worked with Greg Janik on this just to do our homework, and it's not to waste all of our time, but we're working on things that are fireproof rated. So it would be a similar idea and design behind it, but in the application, I believe I put it, our goal would be to have one on each side rather than 2 to 3 on each side. And then we can properly social distance within those spaces. But the key factor is how do we heat them? And that's where we've been working with Greg on that. And he sent some ideas and we were able to brainstorm, but it basically would have to be a fireproof material, which would be leaning more towards the greenhouse side of it. But it would be linen tables. It would be super elegant like Bodie's is. We try to run with the LED lights we have on the outside, but it's really just for us to try to get through Christmas being creative and then kind of seeing what happens from there. Because we don't see, the 50% getting lifted anytime soon, just because of everything that's going on. And this would be one way for us to continue to allow patrons at least, over 20 people.
So for clarity, Cindy, the Historic Commission doesn't have anything to do with code, right? Fire rated or not.
Correct. You're just looking at the exterior appearance and the details and the materials. The materials may be not so clear plastic, but they may be more canvas-like. I'm not
That's
sure.
correct. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
correct.
So say a little bit more about that, Josh, if you could. So between the two different types of structures, because a greenhouse that's not clear is a tent. Are you definitely proposing sort of plexi or see-through material as shown in the application on the greenhouse, and same with the igloo?
Yeah, so we talked to Greg about this yesterday, just because, again, we didn't want to waste your guys' time as far as presenting. So there's a new material out there that is clear that we are looking into. It's a hot topic just right now, just with COVID and trying to get creative to give that greenhouse / igloo experience. But we might have to go the tent route. Just because that might be the only option as far as like actually getting product in time to make this happen before the end of the year. So it could, and this just changed, within the last few hours, it could be more of a tent style rather than a clear temporary structure.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead? Anything else, Josh or Cindy, to tee up? No. Let's go ahead and go around the table.
I do have a question on this. This is Garnet,
Yeah.
if
go
that
ahead.
helps. So Cindy or John or whomever, if you guys can, Tim, if you guys can educate me a little bit, since this is, we're obviously in a unique situation with COVID, and we're trying to do whatever we can to help our businesses survive as long as they can until the weather gets to the point where it prohibits anything. Based on the fact that this is a temporary structure, do we have a little more leeway when it comes to forgiveness, I guess, if you will, or allowing such type of structures because it's not a permanent thing? Does that make sense?
Yes. If you're asking me that, Garnet, my opinion would be yes. And we've done this before in certain instances, made temporary decisions or decisions on temporary things for those kinds of reasons. And I think this falls into that category. What's interesting about this one is, so I'm getting in now, this would be my, around the table, this would be my comment or question, would be between those two options, then probably for me, the nicer looking option feels more permanent, but I would want it to be temporary. But if I really want it to feel temporary, for me, it's the less elegant option of the igloo. So I'm in favor of getting to some resolution on a temporary structure. I would, the biggest thing I would care about in the COVID world is doing it quickly so you could impact your sales, and but making sure that this is not a reoccurring structure or theme in a post-vaccine world.
So if I may, then a question for Josh. Then it sounds like your options are changing kind of almost hour by hour, and it's sounding like the canvas, almost tent appearance structure is probably more easily obtainable for you and probably more affordable. Is that what I'm?
Yeah. Well, and then also working off his comment, that would be definitely a more temporary look, which I agree. We're not looking to do this every year. It'd be awesome, but it wouldn't look right. It's just really to help us get through these tough times right now.
Okay. That's it for me.
Thanks, Garnet. John, questions or comments?
I do not have any.
Jennifer, questions or comments?
I think, I mean, obviously this wouldn't ordinarily get approved, but they need to stay in business. And I think as a temporary measure, if you put that in the motion, it's temporary, it's, due to COVID. I don't really have a problem with any of the three options for temporary, to have a temporary setup like that.
Okay. Thank you. Keith, questions or comments?
Yeah, I just go back to the regs, and thank you, Cindy, for putting this together. And so long as we agree that we're going to waive the HDC constraints that we use to make these decisions under new construction, we probably need, we don't need to go into the detail and argument on this stuff, but streetscape compatibility, architectural style, compatibility siting and massing, compatible detailing, pedestrian scale, and distinguishing new from old. If we're willing to say those aren't things that aren't, something we're going to challenge or discuss because of COVID, let's just document it and say we're going to let that go for this, instance. Otherwise, we have to go through every detail and say whether we're going to accept that or not. And I don't think it's worth the effort like everyone else is thinking.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. Nico?
I prefer the greenhouses, I can tell you that. I don't think I'd be a fan of the tents, but I understand the need.
Okay. Did I miss anybody? No.
So I have another question. This is Garnet again. So when we talk temporary, what are we talking from when to when?
So just for context too, actually on this property, when Bodie's first opened, they had an application for the isinglass panels on the porch. Mm-hmm. And at one point, I believe the approval on that followed a precedent that we also approved for Wally's back before they put garage doors in, where we said we approved that awning isinglass structure to be up no earlier than blank and taken down no later than blank. I don't remember what the dates were. So I could see us doing something similar for that for the calendar year 2020 and 21 or something like that to note COVID times, pre-vaccine times. But I think it would need to have a time horizon attached to it.
Yeah, and just to comment on that too, this is Josh. I mean, we might get into this, and our goal would be to try to get through Christmas because, January, February gets pretty slow for us. We might not even make it that far because of the heating aspect of it. So it might be something we take down even sooner. But we're up for whatever, and I would totally agree. I mean, we don't want necessarily this to happen. It's just what we have to do right now. So
sure. I think to Keith's comments and points he was making, I would bolt on to that one more step and say there's the guidelines, which we can make an exception for in a temporary sort of emergency situation, which is kind of where we're headed. But then there's this notion that I think as long as you realize what we're trying to do is protect the streetscape and the scale in the district with a temporary structure that all of a sudden feels permanent and it's competing with the building itself. So that's why I said what I said about, like, I like the greenhouse better in terms of what you're trying to accomplish, but it feels more permanent and it competes with the structure that's in the district. So if we were to say, like, whatever tent/greenhouse structure feels more compatible with what you're trying to do and where we try to live, it makes me nervous that it wouldn't have a time horizon on it because I think it will feel permanent, and I don't like that. I think that gets us into dangerous territory that we've been in before around permanent versus temporary. So that would be my only caution that I would try to put in the motion somehow. Does anyone else have questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question for Josh. Hey, Josh, what is the plan to heat it? How are you planning on doing that? Is it with electric space heaters, or what's the thought?
Yeah, I mean, again, trying to keep it as elegant as we can. So it'll be linen. We won't have to have our umbrellas. So whatever looks the best, but is also, smart, working with Greg on that. But ideally, yeah, it's gonna be something around a space heater. We personally don't want to do the heating towers. That would
Right.
just kind of ruin the effect in there. So it's a combination of, maybe some kind of fan or something to move the air, but keeping it warm at the same time. So that's something that if we got approved on this, we'll work with Greg on to make sure we're up to code and everything.
Okay.
I do think the final motion and final motion should have language around size and number. I think we need to agree on that because I'm making it up, but if two greenhouse structures that are 12 by 12 don't work, but you find the perfect size tent to go across the entire front, I would not be a fan of that. So I think we need to be specific around what we are approving in terms of number and size.
So this is Garnet again. So Josh, can you speak to that? What the sizes of either the tent or the greenhouse structure would be?
If we had to do a tent, I mean, those patio, we have an 18 by 20 if we don't cut into the pathway, which we could a little bit, but we definitely would not do one across. One, I don't think it'd work, but two, yeah, it would look ridiculous. The other side's 15 by 20. So, I mean, we were looking at some tent sizes. They have a 20 by 20, like a wedding tent kind of style, but I don't know if that actually would work with a roof line and all that. So it would be no bigger than a 20 by 20 on both sides. But most likely it's going to be smaller just because we have like our flagpole on the left side. So I'm not even sure how that would work. So it's kind of, the greenhouses were ideal for that reason because we were able to work around the flag, or not the flagpole, but the sign for boaties. So we'd have to get really creative on, what size we can work with, but it would be no greater than 20 by 20 on both sides.
But this is Keith here. The application specifically calls out 4 8 by 8 or 2 12 by 12s. Are we talking about something different now?
If we had to go the tent route, which it sounds like that's going to be the quickest and best solution, and also would, display the most temporary structure, it would be the tent route. If we can do the greenhouse and get approvals from a fire safety side, then we'd go through with the exact sizes that are on there.
So Tim, will you comment on the application accuracy then, please?
Yeah, well, I think based on we can only vote on what is in the application. So we can't vote on what might be. So, depending on what the motion is, I would suggest anyway for consideration that when we get to the motion, we base the motion based on what's on the application in terms of the number of igloos and size and number of greenhouses and size and not to exceed. And if that changes, we just have to go to Plan B in terms of staff approval or coming back before the commission for another option. We'd want to be really expedient with that, knowing what your weather constraint is. But as you can imagine, we can't be ambiguous in what we're approving.
Josh, what's your time frame? What are you looking at? When are you looking to install them?
Well, that's a great question as well. I mean, I just saw actually we're getting a cold front coming through pretty soon, but getting into the 40s at night. So that alone would most likely start cutting into our business. But the plan was before the end of the month.
I guess for just as a data point, this is not going to be a unique situation. Other restaurants are going to face the same challenge. Obviously, those who have outside space to do something like this, it's probably going to be something that comes up again. So that's a reason to think carefully about it.
I mean, just a suggestion, but if we're going to have, 2, 3, 4, however many more restaurants coming back in, would it be possible just to have a special meeting for that?
Yeah, I think that's a smart idea, Jennifer.
Because you're all sitting in our houses anyway.
Yeah, I agree with that. And that'll give Josh some time to figure out what exactly he's going to be able to get his hands on.
Because it sounds like it's not what's in the application. That's going to be, that sounds more like that's likelier to happen. That's going to be tense. So, yeah.
I think that's a good suggestion. And as long as that is a quick special meeting versus what we've done in the past, which I don't want to do again, which is 3 commissioners going on site without the benefit of the rest of the commissioners, I'm in favor of that. So I guess our option would be to table this tonight, or to, I'd prefer to table it. But Cindy, help us with rules of order on that. Should we table or should we vote, knowing that we might be voting to decline?
Well, I think if you're willing to have the special meeting and with relatively short notice, I think tabling is the better option.
Okay.
Can I make one more comment? This is just a thought. Just to let Josh move forward with this. What if we added to our motion that the tent cannot exceed the total square footage of the 4 igloos and the 2 greenhouses? And then it still has to meet staff approval, but then we give him at least something to go on there. We're already approving a certain amount of square footage if we approve this motion or this application. Why don't we just add a tent as a condition within that square footage?
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. It would be the total square footage of the number of igloos or the greenhouses.
Yeah, that's one or the other. Yep.
I mean, go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, I think that's fair, because from an HDC perspective, I don't think, from all the criteria that we use to make decisions, that would violate any of those things, because we've waived going through the gory details of all of those things, right? We've said, okay, we understand the situation. If you can figure out another way other than the igloos or whatever, and it still meets your criteria, I think that's a fair way to look at it.
I agree. I think looking at it from a square footage and then having it go for staff approval.
Yep.
Okay. I'm on the front page on my own screen. So everyone okay if I take a stab at a motion then?
Cindy has one. All you have to do is add the square footage part to it. It's at the bottom.
All right, John, go.
Well, I'm just telling Tim if he wants to do it, but I'll do it. I make a motion to approve the application to install 4 igloos or 2 greenhouses at 230 Culver Street, as shown in the application. Also allowing the potential for the same square footage of the igloos or the greenhouses to apply to a tent structure that would then need staff approval.
Second, Ms. Garn.
Thank you. I would just add to that either 4 igloos or 2 greenhouse structures at the sizes stated in the application. And And when you said tent, John, I would add temporary.
Okay.
If temporary could be peppered in that motion everywhere we can to, I think the motion should also include a start and an end date would be my recommendation.
I would add that the word temporary before the 4 igloos or the temporary greenhouses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And before the tent, and maybe temporary usage for the purposes of this application constitutes September 5th, 2020 through March 1st, 2021 or something like that. I don't know.
Does it have language that it's temporary and it's being approved because of COVID-19?
Yeah, I like adding the COVID language, and maybe that's. I just don't want to. I don't want to be backed into a corner around what constitutes temporary. That's why I'm suggesting we put an end date on it.
If I could make a comment, you might want to make the end date the time that the 50% occupancy is lifted.
Good idea.
Yeah, great idea. So Cindy, do you have all of that discussion then in the amendment of that motion?
I have a lot of it and we are recording it, so we should be able to put it together. I just wanted to know if you wanted to include the time that the 50% occupancy load is lifted.
I like
instead
that.
of dates.
Well, we don't know what those dates are based on the governor's order. So I think that is a good qualifier to temporary for the purposes of this application.
So for the 2 tents, I have 288 square feet of 12 by 12s, and I have 256 square feet of 464 square foot igloos.
Or a corresponding tent structure.
Exactly.
All temporary, all within a temporary time frame of a government mandate of 50% occupancy or capacity.
Can do.
Okay, the one one comment I'll just make, if you don't mind, is it would be awesome if even if they did lift it to do it through the end of the year, just because we are down, well over $300,000 in revenue. Just keep that in mind. If we can at least get through Christmas, if for some reason they were to lift that.
Well, we could say they have to be removed within 60 days of the lifting of the COVID restrictions. That gives you a little more time.
Yeah, that'd be great. Anything would be extra would be great. But I mean, if we rolled into March, it would most likely be gone anyways by then. So.
Yeah, I just think we need a time horizon on that, a beginning, middle, and end. So I would be comfortable with the 60 days following the reduction of capacity, but I'm not comfortable with any more than that because it's always been outside space. It will need to return to outside space.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I totally agree.
Okay, that was an awful lot in a motion. Thanks for grabbing that, Cindy. All in favor signify by saying yes. Canarsa?
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes.
Leo?
Yes.
Davenport?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.
And Straker is yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, we have one last application, which is 233 Lucy Street. Mr. Mayor.
Hello.
Hello.
How are y'all?
Good, thank you. Welcome. So it looks like you're requesting permission to paint a faux window over your brick on your main house. Anything else to add other than what's in your application in terms of what you'd like to do or why you're proposing it?
Just other than It was bricked in at some point previously, and they left the ornate header on the brickwork, but took out the sill and the window because of the remodel of the kitchen. And we're just, it's a thorn in my side every time I walk by it. Eventually, my goal is to put a window back in there when we do a first floor remodel. But I thought this was a novel idea to have a Trump Llewell type painting of the window to match the one next to it put in there. It's an oil-based enamel. It's a sign paint. And I thought it'd be kind of a neat addition to the community and kind of something that people could see when they go by, and it'll be done from the perspective of driving by on Lucy Street. So it would look a little awkward from the other angle behind, but there's really no view lines there. So.
Okay. Thank you. We will go around the table, the virtual table. Jennifer, any comments or questions?
Can I go last?
Sure.
I'm not sure what to say. I mean, think it looks better, but it's very unusual. So
How about Patterson going first?
Go ahead, Patterson.
I don't think we approve paint.
oh, that's true.
I lived in a Northville, and we had to go in for paint approval. So my question to the board is, do we do paint approval?
No, no, you're right.
We have, I mean, we have because of murals or things like that.
Where does that in the regs? I don't think Cindy showed me anything like that.
Color on masonry is slightly different.
Yeah, I would point to the fourth to the last page where it talks about section B, coatings and colors. Unpainted masonry shall not be painted.
Ah, okay.
So we don't do paint color on wood or I imagine other types of siding, but also keep in mind that this is not the original masonry. This is a bricked in area. So
the short answer for me is we do exterior paint approval. Is that correct?
For masonry.
Okay, thanks. All right, that was my only question I had so far.
So Keith, to clarify, if I take your question one step further, if an applicant had a brick structure and they were asking to paint the entire structure, we would have approval rights on that in guidelines.
For masonry.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Nico.
I have no questions. I think it's interesting. I think it could go south real quickly though, but so I don't necessarily know where I stand on it.
Okay. Canarsa.
Yeah, I could see why something, I think I would like to see something happen here. The brick isn't original. And obviously a real window would be the best solution. But if as long as it's painted and it's not like a person's head in there or something, it becomes more of a mural. I think I'm fine. I don't have any questions about it.
Okay. Lewis?
Yeah, so John, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
you mentioned in here that you had some plans for remodeling. Do you have a time frame for that when you'd like to? Because I'm kind of like, if you're going to go ahead and remodel, then why even paint? So
it's a number of years off yet. That wouldn't happen anytime soon. We just, if you recall, those of you that are on the board, we did something similar to the 245 Spear project. It was on earlier. Just finished that in October, so we have to catch our breath. So I'm not expecting to tackle the first floor of the house probably for at least 2 more years.
Okay.
Any other questions, Garn?
Nope, that's good.
Jennifer, anything else back to you?
So if we were in favor of approving it, and we can't, and we're allowed to We don't do paint on wood, but we do, it does say that paint on masonry is not allowed. Or is it something that we regulate? 'Cause I'm not clear on what the ordinance says.
I can read the exact language out of your packet. It says, previously unpainted masonry shall not be painted. Masonry which was previously painted may be repainted. But I don't, the distinction is if they wanted to paint the whole side of the building, that would be one thing, but the brick that they're proposing to paint is not the original brick. So you're not damaging the original brick. You're just painting it.
And as
I
you
don't know.
can see, it doesn't match. I mean, they have the ornamental things under every window, and that there's the ornament underneath that open window and the top of the window, and the rest of it is a different color brick. So I thought it'd be solving a problem.
Jennifer, anything else?
No, I mean, I think it would be a huge improvement from the streetscape.
I mean, the only thing I would add on this is, first of all, the brick that is there is honest. When you look at what we're looking at right now, it's honest, it's not fake. I don't really look at, I mean, I clearly know that there used to be a window there and that somebody bricked it in. I personally have a really hard time making a fake window on a historic contributing structure on brick. I just think it's not real. But I understand what you're trying to do in terms of harmony on that side of the house. I'm also really worried about the execution next to that window to the right of it and how those things in combination could make what is a really beautiful, sweet house feel a notch off in terms of history. And then my last concern is really about when you do get around to putting the window in, I just don't think we can ever make any, not that this is a less weighty objection, but I don't think we can ever make an approval based on what someone intends to do, because you could sell the house next year and that painting lives on that, versus sort of always looking at this in an honest way and knowing that there used to be a window there. It's just my opinion. Does anybody else have other comments? Or would anyone like to make a motion?
I guess I have one more question. I mean, maybe it's irrelevant, but actually you said execution, Tim, is important here. Is this a tried and true painter or do you have someone, John, that can do the shadowing and make it look like that's a photoshopped image you're showing us, right?
Correct. And
so there are shadows in there and nuances that a really, really good faux painter can replicate.
Right, and he described the process to me. It's something, excuse my French isn't well, but Trompe l'oeil, he said it's a technique used all over the world. It's the same gentleman that painted the star Saugatuck sign in Douglas on the highway there on Blue Star.
Yeah.
Randy
he's a craftsman.
Yeah. So he basically laid out the idea. It's sealing and priming the existing wall, then using sign paint, enamel, oil-based, environmentally safe paint, and doing the rest of it that way. So, and it would be oriented from the street, as I said earlier, so it would look the same as the window next to it from this angle.
The one other consideration is, do we know when that was bricked in?
I don't know.
I mean, I don't think the fact that it's not the original brick and that it was bricked in doesn't make it historic. It tells a story. It could have been in 1940, could have been in 1960. I don't know that it's a great story, but that's what preserving history is about. And that's my point about, like, it could be 1940 or 1960 brick, but it's honest brick, and you know what you're looking at on a contributing structure.
I would venture to say the previous owners owned the house since 1956, so I believe it was done after 1956.
Okay. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Do you have it written up, Cindy? I didn't see it.
I did not have this one written up. It was the one that got buried on my desk under the
Okay.
election stuff, and I just put it together at the last minute.
If you go to the top, here, Nico, you want me to give it a try? This is Keith.
Can I say one more thing before somebody makes a motion?
Sure.
Can we kind of include the temporary language pending the restoration of the original window in the motion, maybe?
Restoration, well, he would be,
Well, replacement of the window to restoring it to the original window where the original window was when John renovates eventually.
But Tim already commented on that, that we shouldn't be making motions based on something that could happen in the future. Didn't you just say that, Tim, a little bit ago?
You're right, yeah.
yeah. I mean, Mr. Mayor could sell the house in 6 months after month 5 of the painting.
True.
Yeah.
Keith, do you want to give it
Go
a
ahead,
shot?
Keith. Go ahead, Keith.
I'm going to keep it real simple. I'd like to move that we approve John Mayer to paint a faux window over the bricked window on the west side of the house of 233 Lucy Street.
Okay.
Period. That's
Period.
it.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Nico seconds. Is there any more dialogue or discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying yes. I'll do roll call. Leo?
Yes.
Canarsa?
Yes.
Davenport?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes, and I can hardly wait to see this one happen. It'll be fun to watch.
Patterson?
Yes.
And Straker's a no.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for
I just
joining
like
us
to
tonight.
I just like to offer that if the people at Spear Street don't get windows, he could paint them on their building as well.
That's not helping me, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you,
All
neighbor.
right, I'll quit while I'm ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, neighbor.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. Cindy, any administrative approvals or updates?
None,
Any communication?
nothing.
Is there any more public comment? Commission comment. Do we want to, before we talk about officers, I had one thing, which is you sent us an email, Cindy, about, oh my gosh, my mind just went completely blank.
Oh, the
Park Street. And,
Thank you. You sent me sent us an email about the gazebo and the band shell.
Oh, yes.
oh, yeah.
When will is that slated to be on Historic District Commission agenda next month, or what's happening with that?
It is in process. I do not have an application yet, but I expect to receive one. I think that the city council is going to talk about it at a workshop meeting with the police in Vandenbrink and see if they can't start to guide that conversation about what they want it to look like. And that is a public meeting open to the public. And I would encourage any historic district commissioners that are interested to be at that meeting and listen to that discussion and hear how the city council wants to see that proceed. I don't have an exact date. It could be as early as next week, Thursday. But if you check your city website for the packets, council packets, you will see it on the agenda at an upcoming workshop.
Okay. So to be clear, whatever happens in that workshop and whatever council decides, it still comes to the commission for approval.
Correct, correct. And I still have to do some research on the gazebo, on the year it was built, and whether or not it is more than 50 years old.
Regardless, it's a non-contributing, it could be contributing or non-contributing, and our guidelines apply.
Yes.
So my only ask, I guess, Garnet or Cindy, for council meetings is to just sort of make sure that our guidelines are known
Mm-hmm.
in that meeting, because it becomes really subjective very fast of the value of a structure like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, as we've made decisions in other cases, the narrative is part of the history. So I don't fully know the narrative of that band shell, but that email started to unpack that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And that would play into our decision, I think, when we hear that. So I just want to make sure it's like we're not rushing to, when it does come before us or council hears it, making a decision or an opinion about what's going there without balance of what moves from there potentially.
The historic district has the ultimate call on what is approved or not approved. And if they do not approve it, the applicant always has the right to appeal the decision to the state or give the donated money back to the donors.
Yeah, and I'm not even, please don't hear me saying I'm suggesting that we won't approve it. I'm not going down that road at all. I just, seems like there's growing energy and opinion around this thing of, should it be in this park or that park, and what it should look like. And I just, you know, if I could attend the workshop, I will, and represent us, but I just want to make sure we have all those facts and that there's good data going into those decisions before us.
Big difference between contributing and non-contributing for the gazebo is whether or not it could be demolished. So I still have to do my homework on that.
Thank you.
And you know, this is Keith. I think that's going to be the question, is from an HDC perspective, is it'll be a demolition request. That'll be step one, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Officer conversation.
So if I may, this is Garn. It might end up being similar to the conversation we had last month with the two temporary structures, or the two structures that Sean Steele is moving or demolishing, right? We had that same kind of discussion.
Yeah.
So that's what it's beginning to feel like. So anyway.
It is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Officer conversation, Cindy?
We need to elect officers, and we can do it today, or we can do it next month. Or if you want to talk about it between each other, that's good. We will be having a new appointment that will be on at our next meeting, and his name is Daniel Panozzo. He just hasn't been appointed yet because I couldn't get Ken and Dan and Tim and I all together in the same room for quite some time, but we finally did, and I think we all have a good candidate.
So let me just ask, does anyone have a desire to be chair? Everyone just simmer down now. You're all talking over each other.
I nominate Tim.
Yeah, I do too. Tim, you do a great job.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I just want to make sure, like, I'm happy to share. I think, Nico, you are the current vice chair, correct?
That's correct.
Would anyone like to do that, or would you be willing to continue in that role?
So I actually don't think that I can continue in that role. And I think that I have, at some point here, I don't know when my, my tenure kind of ends here, but I don't think I can be renewed. So that's another issue.
Okay.
So Tim, let me suggest this. This is Keith. Rather than doing this, free form here, maybe you could send out the requirements of what the chair's activities are on a normal basis and a vice chair. So everyone could have a chance to consider what that role would be if they took it on. Because right now, I can't make a decision. I don't know what you do. I don't know what Nico does, right? What, in addition to showing up once a month, you need to kind of scope that out and say, this is what the normal, in addition to what you do once a month, these are the other things that I end up doing.
So that's exactly that's where I was going. What I don't like that's happened in the past is we just have a conversation in this meeting of, do you want to do it? Yep. Okay. Boom. We vote on it and it's done. I just wanted to give people voice, and if to raise their hand to say, you know what, I could be interested in that, but like you said, I want to know more about it. But I definitely will send out an email with a little more probing of people's opinions. So if you feel more comfortable one-on-one, share that back with me or Cindy. But I just wanted a little group dialogue, and then we can have some individual dialogue between now and the next meeting. And then I think when we come back together as a group in our next meeting, we can vote with some knowledge around where people's passion might be.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Okay. Cindy, does that work for you?
It does. So I'm going to strike the nomination that we just made and do it next month, or do you want to go ahead with the chair?
Yeah, no, because those weren't nominations. That was just conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's important to scope it out, and everybody gets 4 weeks to give it some thought and then decide at the next meeting whether they would be willing to take it on or not.
What I think is really important about this group is we're starting to establish some continuity with commissioners, and we're starting to understand where our passions lie, how we think, how we react to things. We're really drafting well off each other in terms of what Jennifer said makes me think a little differently than I did before she spoke, and we're understanding kind of that evolution, which I think is really, really important. So I think it's so important that we try to maintain consistency of these 7 people as much as we can. And then the second thing is I also, while consistency is important, a change in leadership is also important. So I think for the good of the commission, we should have a plan for somebody else to be chair at some point. And we should just be planful in our dialogue between now and the next meeting. If I continue in that, it's fine if we decide that, but that's not a forever solution, obviously. So we should just plan for succession. You can tell I'm in that mode at work right now.
That's wise.
Okay, sounds good. If there isn't anything else, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Sorry, this is Garnet, just one more thing, not to go over too long. The whole discussion with Bodie's is, and this is probably a question for Cindy, is there a way we can be proactive on behalf of our businesses that currently have or are using the pop-ups? Because now we've opened the door with the Bodie's structure. Is there a way we can be proactive to open up the door for approval for other businesses should they want to follow this same path?
I'm concerned that the extension that the state has granted for the liquor license applies only to property that is on their own private property, not on property in the right of way. And I read it a couple of times, and I think that's what it says, but I do want to confirm that. And Bodie's is on their own private property, so I'm not concerned with that. What I'm concerned with the pop-ups and even the curbside between the sidewalk and the curb is snow plowing.
Yeah.
It's going to be a problem. I'm afraid even if they just use the curbside, the snowplow is going to go past and bury them.
Yeah, true.
And the outdoor things, one of the parts that the Liquor Commission says it cannot be a fully enclosed structure. So I just haven't had the opportunity to look at it as closely as I would like to before making a recommendation. But we had a
Sure.
big heavy snow last November.
Yeah,
And it was
I remember.
so wet and
Yeah.
heavy, I couldn't even get out of my driveway. So
Yeah.
Darn, my concern, I'm glad you brought that up. My concern, I think we should mobilize really quickly to help businesses do this in a temporary way. As it relates to baggage that the Historic District Commission has, where it gets wonky for me is when something is meant to be temporary and it looks permanent and it ends up staying. That's where I think if I go back to awning days, we get into a slippery slope. And so I like Cindy's addition to that application because government orders are going to come and go a lot in a way that we can't even predict between now and likely May or June of next year. So tying it to something like that in terms of temporary, it feels like we're giving the business owner the benefit of the doubt, but we're also protecting ourselves that it doesn't become a permanent thing that we can't stand behind.
Okay. Yeah, I think the sooner that we can, and sorry, Cindy, I mean, the sooner we can have this conversation with the business owners, I think the better off we'll be for them, because I think they're all still really right now kind of nose down to the grindstone. But I think as soon as our season begins to ease up, there's going to start to be some concern, and it might be easier to nip it before it gets out of control and anger ensues. You know what I mean?
mhm.
So
Yeah, I really need to read that executive order again and compare it, or the state liquor control order, and compare it back to their definitions of what is a LDC license and a OLM license, because not my specialty.
okay, very good. That's it. Thanks, y'all.
I think we all agree that we want to be really friendly towards that challenge that everyone's having right now. So, all right, do I have a motion to adjourn? I'll move.
So yeah, so moved. Yeah.
All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Davenport? We have to roll call, sorry. Davenport?
Yes.
Canarsa?
Yes.
Leo?
Yes.
Patterson?
Yes.
Lewis?
Yes.